Thank you, Bridget. After understanding how child's development works, we can look at some pros and cons of a child having a phone on their own. One of the two positive results noticed is social interactions. Children who have a cell phone have the ability to contact their friends when they're not around or live far away. Child's Play ELC states that socializing allows kids to build skills that will help them be confident and autonomous later in life. Social interactions will help children develop their self-esteem and build resilience towards the unknown, in turn, create connections that make new social interactions less scary. The second reason is for children to have an enhanced communication with parents and guardians, the ability to reach out in emergencies and opportunity to develop reasonable technology use, which is pretty self-explanatory. But most children would say that having a phone in their age is necessary. Adults will argue this, stating that technology is modern day danger. Adults notice that children or even young teenagers do not know how to control their screen time themselves, turning into addicts. Overuse of cell phone can act as a barrier to quality interactions and conversations, leading to decreased satisfaction in their relationship with others and life in general. Excessive device use can lead to feelings of being disconnected when they spend time with friends and family, which also leads to concentration and learning issues. Adding on to that, a scholarly source by PubMed Central states that high proportions of youth engage in heavy smartphone use and media multitasking, which with resultant chronic sleep deprivation and negative effects on cognitive control, academic performance, and social emotional functioning. Digging deeper into this specific study, significant hormonal shifts that occur during puberty affect teenagers and their mood. As teens mature, they commonly experience increased irritability, intense sadness, and frequent frustration, from which chemical changes and adding a phone to this would only make the situation worse. Another scholarly source supports that by stating the duration of mobile RF exposures significantly affects the plasma levels of hormones. We also showed that the mobile RF can alter some micrometric and structural parametric of adrenal glands. As mentioned briefly, children's use of phones also affect their relationship with parents. The Economic Times states that the study notes that 87% of children believe that not having a smartphone makes them feel inferior, while 87% accepts that they talk to their parents rudely while using smartphones because they get annoyed. This can easily be inferred considering we just talked about hormones playing an interesting part of this. For many American youth, 16 is probably the most important birthday they celebrate before they reach legal adulthood. At least so far it was for me. At 16, a young person can get their driver's license and a job, and more importantly, they can enjoy the freedom and be expected to cope with their responsibilities that come with both. For these reasons, we believe that 16 is a reasonable age for a child to receive a phone as well. I mean, if the government thinks that they're mature enough to drive, they're mature enough to make their own decisions. Adding to that, having that need to communicate with parents, friends for group projects, colleges for work, and GPS for directions. Though let's not forget that the main reason why everyone wants a phone is social media, which is a super dangerous topic that cannot be ignored. Ariel, why don't you tell us a little more on what you and other specialists think on this matter?
Thank you, Arisha. Hello, everyone. My name is Ariel, and today I will be closing on the risks of our young adolescents and their use of social media. Oh, gosh. Okay. Social media is like a whole other world right at our fingertips, and the risks of even adults becoming addicted to the endless scrolling into the rabbit hole are extremely high. A peer-reviewed article published by JAMA Psychiatry on associations between time spent using social media and internalizing and externalizing problems among U.S. youth states. This study suggests that increased time spent on social media may be a risk factor for internalizing problems in adolescents. Future research should determine whether setting limits on daily social media use, increasing media literacy, and redesigning social media platforms are effective means of reducing the burden of mental health problems in this population. So there has been numerous studies within the psychiatric and psychology fields on the dangers of social media use, especially at such young ages. Dr. Rodolfo Lebe, who is an expert in media psychology and has written many peer-reviewed academic studies on the impact of social media in general, says, an extensive and international body of research, which includes several longitudinal and experimental examinations, consistently shows that social media increases anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, life dissatisfaction. Oh, my Lord. And psychological distress, Levy says. So, guys, knowing this and how fragile and extremely impressionable young minds are another reason kids shouldn't be on social media at such a young age. More and more young people are having trouble differentiating between real life and the social media world. They are sucked into posting just to post for validation and not being able to talk and engage in the real world. Some concerns that some might have on young adolescents in social media are as follows: self-esteem issues, poor eating or sleeping habits, use of drugs, criminal behavior, harmful biases. And that is just to touch on a few. I am a mom of two littles. And what are my thoughts as far as whether I'm going to let my kids on social media? Well, I don't want to be that strict parent, and some might say weird parent, but no, not if I have a say over it. I think let kids be kids. Are you a parent looking for resources? I found a great resource for parents and I wanted to share it with you all. It's called Thumbs Down Speak Up, and it's a nonprofit that provides support and resources to parents. TDSU is your guide as it can help prepare your children for online interactions. TDSU provides you with the tools you need to set your kids up for success before they start interacting online. With the TDSU approach, you can feel confident that your children will be armed with the skills they need to be independent and responsible. Guys, this was just a beneficial resource that could help parents to equip their kids and themselves better. One might be wondering, so what age is appropriate for social media use? Great question. Upon research on this topic, there isn't a set age one can pinpoint as safe for regular access to social media. But there is research on precautions that can be put in place to better protect our children's young growing minds. I believe it should be of the utmost importance to spread the message to parents and teens about the healthy versus unhealthy use of social media. Kathy Catella, who specializes in health and medicine, wrote, the excessive use of social media can harm teens by disrupting important healthy behaviors. Some researchers think that the exposure to social media can overstimulate the brain's reward center. And when the stimulation becomes excessive, it can trigger pathways comparable to addiction, Catella says. Guys, we need precautions to put in place for our young youth. A few precautions that we as a society should advocate for are regulating the usage and monitoring our children's platforms, advocating for the companies of the social media platforms to enforce stricter age verification precautions, and they should even put stronger regulations in place for removing suicidal or violent posts. Again, these are just to name a few, but in hindsight, it's not the solve all to the problem. The risks are still going to be there, and unless we shelter our children, it is inevitable that they will find themselves on one of these platforms. You might be thinking, is it really that bad? Aren't there some positives to having access to social media, at least by the age of 15? Well, yes, there are some positives to having social media platforms. Jason Kelly, an activism director, wrote, in March, the American Psychological Association, APA, released a health advisory on social media use in adolescents. In it, the APA makes clear, he says, using social media is not inherently beneficial or harmful to young people. Rather, he says, the effects of social media depend on multiple factors, in particular, Jesus, I'm sorry. Teens' pre-existing strengths or vulnerabilities and the context in which they grow up. He says this view is backed up by science, but it's also just common sense. Social media reflects society. It has dark corners, but also bright spots like educational resources, vibrant and uplifting communities, and places where people can stand up for what they believe in, from fighting racism to pushing for stronger gun laws. Nearly 5 billion people use it to connect and share ideas. So it would be absurd to claim that this complex landscape is inherently good or bad for anyone, Kelly says. Food for thought on that quote, guys. It really comes down to the parents and or individual child. If parents see that their adolescent seems more on the wild side, maybe social media access should wait, or it could help them connect and find that happy place that they might have been yearning for and or missing. So many of you might be thinking, what does she want us to think? Give our children access or don't? My personal but not expert opinion is wait. The young, growing minds of our children will have a lifetime of social media and phone use. The cliche, kids should be kids, rings true in many instances, but this one particular. It can wait. One thing that I do know is that social media is ever changing and growing, and that it isn't going anywhere anytime soon. All in all, having access to a phone with a world of web browsing and social media at our children's fingertips will always be a risk. Do your research and be sure to put that thinking cap on and pull it down tight. It's a big world out there, and our kids need safe guidance. At the end of the day, we need to fight for our future generations' well being and safety. And I believe that starts right at home with monitoring the use of our kids' social platforms.